Welcome back, listeners, to This Blend, the podcast where we dive deep into the crossroads of business and personal growth, uncovering the aspects, the secrets that drive success. Well, I'm your host, Reema, as always, and today I am excited to be joined by my guest, Laura. She's an award winning business coach and founder of Venture Coaching International. Listeners, with over 30 years of experience bridging leadership theory with practical application, Laura has helped countless business leaders and executives across North America master their communication, delegation, and even emotional intelligence. From the boardroom to personal breakthroughs, I believe she is a whole person coach who understands that business success is more than just strategy. It's about mastering yourself. So let's quickly dive in, listeners. So, Laura, welcome to the show, and I'm thrilled to have you here with us today.
Well, hi, Reema. Thanks for having me today.
Laura, before we even talk about all the different aspects around leadership, including emotional mastery, how exactly do you define leadership? What qualities make a great leader, especially in today's context?
Well, I believe leadership actually it's a really big umbrella, and that it encompasses all sorts of facets. So, for example, I think about personal leadership as leadership. Is how do we lead ourselves, whether or not we're in a role or have a title of leadership like manager, director, CEO, or business owner. Leadership encompasses how we show up and how we lead our lives personally first. And then leadership can go on to include things like parenting. How are we being an effective parent and leading our families? How are we leading small groups? Like perhaps you're leading your son or daughter's soccer team, or maybe you're on a volunteer board at your community center and you're in a leadership role there. So there's sort of general leadership opportunities there in our lives. And then it moves on to running a business and being that business owner and leading a business and leading a small team, all the way up to executive leadership, where maybe we have a title of CEO or CFO and or manager, director, and we're not only leading ourselves and a corporation, now we're leading larger teams of individuals. So I really see leadership as having a very, very broad definition, all the way, I would say, down to the micro level of how we lead ourselves, all the way up to the macro level of someone leading a large corporation and team.
Wow. And it's interesting to see how you mention about parenting, especially, I do believe parenting is one of the most difficult form of, create a picture of a person, a whole person. So it's really interesting how you connected both the worlds, wherein in business we just talk about strategy, technical skills, success, numbers and all. But it's really interesting, Lauren. And thank you so much.
Well, and I certainly discover, my leadership skills are put to the test when I became a parent. I have, my kids aren't kids anymore. They're in their 20s. But my husband and I were very thoughtful about our parenting. We learned lots along the way about what we did want, what we didn't want. And my husband has his own company too, and both of us learned how to lead ourselves effectively and lead our businesses. A lot of that was through the parenting journey. So it's all blended and intertwined.
True. Couldn't agree more. And you also emphasize the importance of bridging theory to practice. If we can give us an example of a common leadership or let's say communication theory that leaders often struggle to apply, and how you help them overcome that challenge?
Yeah, that's something I've always been passionate about. Before I was a business coach, my background started off in counseling, and so working with families and individuals, and then I moved into the coaching arena with business owners and executive leaders. And one of the things, you can go online and read an article, you can read a book, you can go to a workshop, and I find that there's lots of resources out there telling you what you should be doing. You should be communicating better. You should be active listening when you're working with your team members. And that's the what. But very few people talk about how do you actually do that. And so if we don't understand the how, then how do we put it in practice? So that's it. So seeing that gap over the years is what's compelled me to help people bridge that gap. So, for example, you were asking about communication, and I'm going to use that example of active listening because lots of leaders I find when they're having a conversation with a direct report, they're sharing, feedback with them, or they're giving instruction, they're explaining, they're telling this person, what they need or what to do. And the person they're speaking to is nodding their head, yeah, mm-hmm. And so the leader often thinks that they're communicating clearly and that their direct report is understanding their instruction. But I find a lot of direct reports don't speak up when they don't understand because they're afraid. They feel like if they say something like, I don't understand, or can you explain that differently, that it makes them, look dumb or look like incompetent. So the direct report is, they're saying, yeah, The leader thinks, oh, they're getting it. They're communicating clearly. The direct report goes away and does whatever they do and then brings the work back. And the leader looks at it and says, this isn't what I wanted, and gets frustrated and then starts to think, wow, delegation doesn't work because they're not getting it. Well, it's not an issue of them not getting it. The issue is the leader is not communicating it clearly, and the leader is not checking in to make sure, to confirm their direct report's understanding. So back to that issue called active listening. Active listening is a very powerful communication skill. And but if you don't know how to do it, then you can't put it into practice. So active listening is all about paraphrasing our understanding of the conversation. So, for example, if a leader is delegating to a direct report, they may give instruction and say, I need this report done by X date, and I need it to meet these parameters.
Okay.
The leader needs to stop at that moment and ask the direct report to active listen them. They say, so based on what I've explained so far, what are you understanding from this conversation? Which gives the direct report an opportunity to reflect back to the leader. This is my understanding. That's an example of active listening. That's asking the direct report to actively listen the leader's instruction. When the leader asks for that, then the leader has an opportunity to confirm the clarity that they now know, yes, absolutely, my direct report knows what they need to do, or not. It gives the leader an opportunity to see, oh, I missed something in my instruction, or the direct report isn't understanding what I was trying to convey, which then gives the leader an opportunity to communicate in a different way and try again. And so that's a huge gap in communication, leadership communication, is leaders not asking their direct reports to active listen them. And because of that, miscommunication, misunderstandings happen. And when that and time gets wasted, frustration occurs. There's all kinds of impact when their misunderstandings occur. And so learning a simple skill like active listening and how to use it properly can save huge amounts of time and frustration and in the end money by allowing people to be more effective and more efficient. So I hope that answers your question.
It answers more than that, because I'll be very honest, I did not know about this. I was not aware. And, when, as a whole person, you can be right now a manager or an individual contributor, but in future, if you are leading a team, I think this particular insight is applicable at both the timestamps, because I have gone through this situation twice. As an individual contributor, I always struggled to deliver something which my manager actually liked, or, something as per the expectations, because their instructions were just restricted to, okay, this is your task. You have to do this by so and so date. Here's the deadline. Here is a little bit of source material, and that's it. For example, any kind of presentation, sales presentation or something like that. And I used to get that frustration. Or I mean, there are no clear instructions, and then there's a lot of to and fro, a lot of changes. It creates frustration on both the ends. And, when the leader is not effectively communicating that frustration, I think the individual contributor is also finding it hesitated to communicate that, you just give me clear instructions and I will deliver, maybe more than expectations. And secondly, when right now I am probably in that managerial role, there was an instance where something which I communicated to my team member, the team member did not get it effectively, and because of that, we kind of lost, an opportunity, a business opportunity there. And that time, I think that was really, really a huge lesson for me, that as a leader, I need to be clear cut in my communication. What is my expectations from you, and what you are thinking about those expectations from your end.
Absolutely, it is. And it's so easy for the leader to want to point fingers at and say, well, you're not getting it. And really, what the leader needs to do is turn that finger back on themselves and look at how are they communicating, and then again use a skill like active listening, asking their direct report to paraphrase back their understanding so that clarity is created. Because that's a prime example that you just shared. When the clarity is not there, it creates frustration. It lengthens timelines to get things done, and it can ruin. There can be lost business opportunities like you experienced. So yeah, there's huge impact when communication is not clear. And a simple skill like learning how to active listen will hugely improve communication effectiveness.
Oh my God, I'm going to take this as my biggest takeaway from this conversation. And I hope all of our listeners will also take this, because I haven't found quite a bit on this part about leadership in terms of listening across all this.
Well, the cool part is that these communication skills are relevant to all relationships. So it's not just the leader and business relationship where it's effective. It's effective in our marriages. It's effective in our parenting. It's effective everywhere. So that's one of the things I love about helping people learn to communicate effectively, is because I understand the power that we'll have in all of their relationships and all aspects of their life. And if people really want to learn more about this, these skills are taught in a book called Leader Effectiveness Training. That's a book that I read years ago. There's also a book called Parent Effectiveness Training. It's all communication skills. And it's training. It's a book that was written like in the 70s. This is not new. It's just that people, we don't learn this. We tend to communicate and parent the way we were parented, and then we bring that into our workplace, and whether it's effective or not. So we really want to learn these skills. That would be a great place to start, is with one of those two books, because what I love about those books, they talk about the what you need to do, and they talk about the how to do it.
Mm. Is it the one by let me check, Dr. Thomas Gordon? Is it the one?
Yes. Yep.
Lovely.
So he wrote leader effectiveness. He started with parent effectiveness training. He went on and wrote leader effective training, sales effectiveness training, and teacher effectiveness training. So he just took those core communication skills and applied them to those different audiences. And then when he passed away, his daughter, Linda, carried on the company. And she wrote a book called Be Your Best, which again talks about this communication training, but has her book is slightly more geared towards women, and setting boundaries and communicating more effectively. So there's some great source material out there, no matter what type of leadership position you're in or situation you're dealing with.
Lovely, lovely. Well, I'm going to definitely mention this in the show notes for our listeners to check this resource out. I think it's really, really very helpful. And thank you so much for suggesting it, Lauren.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love, there's no point reinventing the wheel. There are great tools out there if we know where to find them. And I think you can probably hear in my voice that I'm pretty excited about that series. It's awesome.
Yes, it is. It is. Lovely, lovely. Okay. Now let's talk about delegation. We'll circle back to the start of the conversation. So, why do you think so many leaders struggle with it? Of course, we did dive deep into one component of that delegation, but what steps can leaders take to delegate effectively without micromanaging or losing control?
So that's a great question. And one of the issues that contributes to poor delegation is, first off, their mindset. And lots of leaders have struggled to delegate effectively. They, like yourself, they don't get work back that they wanted the way they wanted it. And so a mindset of, this delegation stuff doesn't work, I just have to do it myself.
Yep.
And of course, they can't do it all themselves, and they shouldn't be doing it all themselves. And there's things that are happening in their business that they shouldn't be doing because they're not skilled at it. So at some point, a leader has to learn how to delegate, or they are stifling their growth, their business growth. So again, another great resource, another good book to read, and it's a really short read, is called If You Want It Done Right, You Don't Have to Do It Yourself, by Donna Gennett. And it's a short little 1-hour read about delegation. So I love that book because it circles back and talks about this point about active listening. But she goes on to share, and the book is a story of two managers. One is quite successful in his role, gets things done at work, so is able to enjoy work-life balance. Whereas his neighbor is also a manager who's not being successful. And so work is just invading. He's not happy at work. He's not getting things done. He's coming home and having to work at night because things aren't working at work. And so it's a story of the one neighbor helping the other. And what he talks about is you have to be clear about your goals and objectives when you're delegating. So that's one item. You have to be clear about the time frame that the person has to complete on a project. So is it a 1-week time frame? Is it a 1-month time frame? What's the time frame that the person has to complete the project? Then what are the parameters of the project? Sometimes there are certain measurables involved. So the leader has to communicate clearly what the parameters of the project are.
Right.
Next, the leader needs to, in addition to parameters, they need to create check-ins. So it's not about micromanaging, checking in on where you at, how's it going. But if you've got a 1 month deadline, then you probably want to check in 2 weeks with the direct report and check in. How's it going? What's our progress? Is everything on track? If it is, describe to me what's on track. And if something's off track, how do we get it back on track so that the original deadline can be met? I find lots of leaders will delegate and then just think, phew, it's off my plate. And then they rush off to do something else. A month goes by and they're expecting that report on their desk. They get it and it's wrong. And they're not happy with it. And they never checked in along the way. So that's an important facet of delegation. And then another piece that's really important, and this was a conversation I was having with one of my clients just yesterday, which is called decision-making authority. There are different levels of authority that we need to delegate to our direct reports. Sometimes a direct report only has task authority. Their authority is just to complete a task. They do not have decision-making authority on something. If something requires a decision, then they need to come back to the leader for that. And other times, the leader is actually delegating a level of decision-making authority. For example, budget authority. Maybe they are delegating to their direct report that they can make decisions that cost the company up to $1,000 or $5,000, but anything over that needs to be discussed and looked at relative to the company's budget. So decision-making authority is very important and can't be missed, so that a direct report knows how much authority they have to take on any given project. So those are all really important things to be considering when we're delegating. And the book even has little checklists in it to make sure that we don't miss any of those points and can make sure that we're comprehensive with our delegation.
That is really, I think, a very comprehensive and effective summary of delegation. If somebody wants to exactly understand how to delegate, how to do it. Also, I think trust is also a key component here, Lauren, because sorry, Laura. So for leaders, I think I have faced through this situation because I have worked closely with in startups with founders. So there's a lot of trust issues because you have handful of people who are working with you in the founding team, and there are situations where there's a thin line between that trust and when the leader is thinking that some kind of action from the direct report is kind of detrimental to the future of my company. So for leaders who have difficulty trusting their team, what's the first step to rebuild that trust, Laura, and both in others and also within themselves?
Yeah, trust is tricky in that, and so important. Leaders do have a hard time trusting their people, and which is another reason why they have a hard time letting go of things. And many owners, they know the business. They have their business because they've developed a skill in a particular area and then thought, I'm an architect, for example. I know architecture, and now I'm going to start my own company. And now they have people on their team, and they're having, but being an architect is different from being a leader of an architecture firm. And so there's a transition there that the leader has to make. And yes, they need to trust because, and they have to understand that a project may not, or a task may not get completed exactly how the leader would do it, but that it's the result that matters. Did the direct report get the result? If they got the result, even in a different way than how the leader would have approached it, then really it's the result that matters, not how the result was achieved necessarily. So that's an important lesson for leaders to learn, and that to hold their people able. So for example, again, I had a situation just yesterday where my client, the leader,
Okay.
delegated authority to his right-hand person. She made some decisions and for the team and put a policy in place. And then a conversation was taking place around that policy, and the lead in front of one of the team members, and the leader stepped in and changed the policy on the spot and undermined the right-hand person's authority and undermined her leadership. And it's hugely problematic because he's breaking trust with his right-hand person. He's breaking trust with the team member. The team member is seeing that there's a lack of alignment between these two leaders. So trust gets broken there. And, that right-hand person I'm referring to, she's at a place of kind of throwing up her hands and saying, well, I don't care anymore. Do what you want. Because the decisions that she made were now just switched on a dime. And that doesn't work. I'm quite concerned actually about this leader right now because he's risking the relationship with her, and she could end up quitting at some point, which of course I don't want to see happen. She's a huge asset to the company. So I'm working with the two of them right now to get that resolved. So leaders have to be really careful, and they do need to trust. And if they are questioning something, then they need to pull their assistant or their direct report aside and have a conversation with them and come to a new agreement on the matter, not just make unilateral decisions, because it will break down trust over time.
So what do you think, Laura? I know, I mean, it's quite quite of a task. It's quite of a process, because it kind of will be like a one-to-one confrontation. Not exactly confrontation, but maybe it needs quite a lot of communication to be done, and there will be two. What do you think should be done in such a situation from the leader's perspective? Because, commonly what we have seen is, let's say I have a team of 5 people, and in those 5, I have, I have someone who is kind of my right hand person. I do have a trust on that person, but that particular team member may not reciprocate the same level of confidence in what I am deciding, just thinking it from a leader's perspective. And I feel that, there can be a lot of friction affecting the stability of my company or my team. It can affect the team's morale. It kind of, it's creating negative situation among the team members as well, because one person out of that team is not agreeing with my decision, and that one person is coincidentally the right hand person of mine. How can leaders navigate through situations like this, when maybe they have to take a decision to ultimately let that person go?
Well, and that's interesting, yes, because there are different types of trust.
Yeah.
There's one level of trust where we trust people to do what they say they're going to do. And then there's another type of trust that is based on safety.
Okay.
And feeling safe and okay to have difficult conversations and being vulnerable. And so, and that's actually an even more powerful level of trust. And because we have to know that we have to trust that we can share, we can disagree, and also know that teams don't function with 100% consensus all the time.
Yeah.
It's just ultimately at some point, so a leader needs to come to their team, say, we have this situation that we're dealing with. Let's have conversation about it. Let's discuss ideas, and then the leader does need to make a decision. And once the decision is made, even if one person or two people on the team disagree, what makes a team effective is everybody getting behind the decision and understanding that there's not always going to be consensus. And I do see leaders trying to create consensus. And so they won't move forward on something until they get that consensus. And then they're trying to convince people or sway people a certain way. And then people feel pressured and it gets muddy really fast. So leaders have to understand that there isn't always going to be consensus. And at some point, a decision is better than no decision. And then an action gets taken. And then we review, was it effective? Did it work? Did it not work? And what would we do differently or adjust next time? And again, if another great book out there around team development that deals with this issue as well as many others is a book by Patrick Lencioni called The 5 Dysfunctions of Team. And what he talks about is trust. And he looks at the functions of a team in a pyramid fashion, and there's layers to the pyramid. And the foundational, most important layer in the pyramid is trust. The trust that, yes, we trust people to do what they say they're going to do, and that we trust from the perspective of we can have open communication, we can we can disagree with each other at times. It's a safe space to be able to do that, and that we can agree to disagree sometimes. But that the leader, once a decision gets made, everyone on the team gets behind the decision and follows through with the execution. Does that address your question?
Absolutely, Laura. Absolutely. And definitely, I have noted down the name of the book. I'm going to mention the same in the show notes for our listeners as well.
Awesome.
Lovely, lovely. And before we wrap up, I actually do not wish to, but yeah.
All good things must come to an end, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, this is such a masterclass. I mean, we talk about degrees and MBA and all that, but I think circling back again to the main point, everyone tells what to do, what are the characteristics to be a good leader, but how to be? That's the big question.
Mm-hmm.
Before we wrap up, Laura, one final question. You have worked with clients on deeply personal challenges as well, addiction, parenting, infidelity as well. When personal crises arise, I think irrespective of the role, it affects a person, deeply affects a person, especially for a leader. How do you guide them to maintain their performance while also addressing what's happening in their personal lives?
Oh, yeah, that's a big question. Because yeah, I mean, you can't separate business from personal. It's all intertwined.
Yep.
And if something's going on at home, it's going to affect it's naturally going to affect the leader's headspace and their performance at work. And so, one of the things I work with my clients on is, although everything's intertwined, sometimes having to compartmentalize and try to and being learning how to be present. So, for example, when they're at the office, they can't impact anything that's going on at home because they're at the office. So by learning to be present and focused on the now, then they can address, be at the office, do what they need to do, and then, go home afterwards and be present at home and leave the office at the office. So it goes both ways. And there's also the issue of developing mental and emotional mastery, which is so important. Things blend and bleed when we don't have that skill. So learning emotional mastery is really about, that's a big conversation actually, but it's about learning that every situation that we're dealing with is just a data point. It's just a fact. And that when we go into resistance of that data or that situation, then we create a downward spiral for ourselves. Limiting beliefs show up, automatic negative reactions show up. We feel fear and stress and doubt and irritation and anger, all kinds of things. And there's a skill to be learned around neutralizing the original event that triggered us, or that's, and learning how to accept everything that happens in our life as simply an event, not good, not bad, just as a neutral data point. It is something that happened. And then when we can accept instead of resist, we put ourselves in a place of then being able to move into choice, which is, okay, this has happened. I may not like it, but this has happened. And because now that I know that this has happened, now I get to think about, okay, what do I want to do about it? What are my options? And exploring the options, deciding what to do, and then taking action, which gets us moving forward. But I do find that, lots of my clients, get stuck in downward spirals and just kind of spin their wheels because they are in resistance to something. So that's when I have to work with them around understanding this model that I'm describing and neutralizing this situation, getting out of resistance into acceptance so that they can move into choice and start moving forward together, whether that's an incident happening at the office or whether that's an incident happening in their personal life. So I don't think that answer completely addresses everything you asked, but it was a big question. So
can be discussion of its own. I think it can take.
Yes, it is.
Definitely a whole lot different ball game, and I think we all go through that phase, irrespective of being a manager or a leader or individual contributor, when we have to really decide or navigate through that phase, if we are having some difficulties as well. Because yes, it does affect us. They're both intertwined. I don't know.
Absolutely. And I would say as well that if there's stuff going on at home, don't ignore it. Don't try to push it under the rug, because the longer it will keep resurfacing until it gets addressed. So, and it's going to naturally bleed into our performance at work until we address it. So whether addressing it looks like having a conversation at home, it looks like getting counseling, it looks like working with a coach, who either a personal coach or a coach like myself who deals with the personal and the business, get support. Because when we're in something, it's really hard to have perspective on it and fresh perspective. And that's definitely where getting help can help. Whether it's a counselor or a coach, they can help it. They can ask us questions about what's going on, explore our thinking with us, and helps us see things, first of all, from a different perspective, and then give us tools, strategies, and skills for addressing whatever needs to be addressed. So if there's stuff going on at home, the simplest recommendation I have is don't ignore it. Get some sort of help for dealing with it.
But when because I have myself faced similar situations, and unfortunately, I had to take a big decision to, in fact, leave my job just because. And this commonly happens, when you actually express maybe your performance is not as per the expectations, and you have a discussion with your manager or your leader that, I'm facing these kind of situations. And I would definitely, if I get some guidance and, mentoring or something like that, I can definitely do my best in whatever responsibilities are given to me. But that somehow creates a feeling, uh, or that, fear of risk in, blindly trusting on that person, in, for that manager or that leader. Because I've seen situations like this, and that ultimately leads to this downward spiral of, you know not giving enough visibility, or kind of the person getting sidelined. Do you think it's also applicable for the leaders, or the people who are sitting at the leadership positions? I mean, if they think like that, they won't even think about reaching out for help. Maybe if there's any option in the workplace itself.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Leaders aren't perfect. Leaders are, they're doing I do believe that they're doing the best that they can. I don't believe anyone shows up on a daily basis in a malicious way, trying to mess up the workplace. They're doing their best, but they may not have the skills, all of the skills that they need to be an effective leader, whether it's emotional mastery skills or leaders, leadership and communication skills. So that's why there's leadership coaches like myself. Because also, as we go higher up the ladder, leaders can get themselves in a situation where they're in a feedback vacuum, because it's very rare for a direct report to give their leader feedback to say, hey, buddy, you know what? You're kind of screwing things up. Right? That, people don't tend to communicate up. The norm in the workplace is for the leader to give feedback down, but it's unusual for a leader to get feedback up, unless they're really interested in knowing how they are doing as a leader. If they are interested in knowing how they're doing as a leader, they can ask their direct reports for feedback. There are tools out there like 360 feedback tools that they can give. Their surveys that you can give your direct reports that they can fill in anonymously, that will give the leader feedback on how they're doing as a leader, how their communication skills are coming across, so that they can pinpoint where the leader's strengths are and where some of their challenges are. So the higher up a leader goes, the more likely they are in a feedback vacuum. And I think the more important it is for them to create feedback mechanisms for themselves, whether it's survey tools or whether it's having a coach, someone, or a mastermind group that they join, someplace where they can get feedback on how they're doing, because feedback is how we grow. And that, I think it's super important and necessary for leadership.
Absolutely. Wow. Wow. This was such a learning conversation. I'm very, very sure our listeners will enjoy. I mean, they learn so much: resources, insights, practical situations, applying how to apply those, principles, whether it's about team managing, people managing, or communication or delegation. So, of course, Laura, if our listeners would want to connect with you, which I'm very sure they will, how they can find you?
Well, the best place to find me is at my website, which is venturecoaching.ca, because I'm based in Canada. But they can also find me on LinkedIn, Laura Watson. Of course, my business is Venture Coaching. And if they do come to my website, there's obviously they can reach out to me through there, but there's also a tab on my website called Free Stuff. And so there's a whole bunch of ebooks there that they can download, books on communication, books on delegation, ebooks on business planning, other leadership tools. Because as you can see, I'm passionate about helping people put theory into practice, like we talked about at the beginning. So those books are there to provide very practical guidance. And I have done other podcasts similar to this today. So they're is the other podcasts that I've done looking at other leadership topics are also on my website. So there's lots of resources there if they are looking for more. And if they want to have a conversation, they can, my phone number is there. There's a form to fill in. I'm always happy to have a conversation.
Lovely, lovely. Well, we'll have all the details in the show notes for our listeners. And I would encourage all of our listeners to check out the website venturecoaching.ca. You'll get free resources and lots of books, to download. I think it's there for all of you. So I think there cannot be much easier way.
It's there. It's free. Take it, please.
And lot of podcasts. I think a lot of resources. And let's start it small. Let's take this step by step, listeners. So go and check out the website, connect with Laura. I'll also mention her LinkedIn link out there in the show notes. And Laura, thank you so much for such an incredible conversation, such a masterclass on leadership.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Reema. I certainly hope that your listeners have gotten some value from this today.
Absolutely. So, listeners, don't forget to connect with Laura. Don't forget to check out her website, Venture Coaching International. Connect with her for practical tips, more of them as you got today from this conversation as well. And also don't forget to subscribe to Biz Blend for more such conversations. Until next time, stay inspired and stay resilient. Thank you.